Inside the world's most notorious prison uprisings continuation. Modern hell. Prison uprisings in the 21st century. A new era of prison chaos. The 20th century gave us Attica. It gave us Carandiru. But the 21st century? It took prison uprisings to an entirely new level. Because now, inmates weren't just fighting for survival. They were fighting wars on behalf of global cartels, street gangs, and political movements. In this new age, prisons became kingdoms, not ruled by wardens, but by the most violent men behind bars, prisons of the armed. Let's start in Venezuela, where the prisons aren't just overcrowded, they're militarized. By the late 2000s, inmates weren't sneaking in weapons. They were building arsenals, rifles, grenades, even rocket launchers smuggled through corrupt guards. Entire penitentiaries were under inmate control. In places like Tocaron, the gangs turned prison into a paradise for themselves. Casinos, swimming pools, even nightclubs, yes, nightclubs, operated inside the walls, all under the leadership of the prison gang bosses known as prains. When the government tried to retake these prisons, blood flowed. In 2013, the storming of Urabana prison left 61 dead. In 2017, riots in Puerto Ayacucho ended with inmates burned alive. Venezuela's prisons weren't correctional facilities. They were battlegrounds, cartels at war. But if Venezuela was chaos, Ecuador became hell. Its prisons turned into war zones between rival drug cartels, the Los Coneros, Los Lobos, and others, all fighting for control of the cocaine trade. In 2021 alone, more than 300 inmates were killed in Ecuador's prisons. Many were executed on camera, heads severed, bodies burned. These weren't riots anymore. They were massacres. And unlike Attica or Carandiru, these massacres weren't about protests or demands. They were about power, control, cartels using prisons as common and centers to run their empires. Africa's forgotten uprisings. Across the Atlantic, Africa has seen its own uprisings, though many go unreported. In Malawi, a riot over food shortages left dozens dead. In South Africa, gang rivalries sparked prison wars that mirrored the streets of Cape Town. And in Nigeria, Boko Haram fighters staged mass prison breaks, freeing hundreds of militants. These uprisings reveal a brutal truth. In regions where governments fail, prisons collapse first, and when they do, the line between a prison riot and a civil war disappears. Asia's brutal crackdowns. In Asia, the story is just as grim, but with a different twist. Here, governments have often responded with overwhelming, merciless force. In the Philippines, drug suspects crammed into prisons sparked riots so intense they turned gymnasiums into morgues. In Thailand and Indonesia, riots over overcrowding led to deadly fires, trapping hundreds of inmates. In these places, uprisings weren't just crushed, they were incinerated, America's modern flashpoints. And in the United States, the uprisings never ended, they just evolved. At Rikers Island in New York, chaos simmers daily. At Mississippi's Parchman farm, riots in 2020 left cells soaked in blood, and in California, gang wars inside supermax prisons continue to claim lives, even under 24-hour surveillance. From coast to coast, American prisons remain powder kegs. All it takes is one spark, the pattern that never breaks. From Attica to Carandiru, from Venezuela to Rikers, the pattern is the same. Brutal conditions, rising tension, the spark of violence. And then, blood. Always blood. And yet nothing changes. Because prisons were never designed to rehabilitate. They were designed to contain. And when that containment fails, humanity itself collapses inside the walls. Teaser for the finale. But this story isn't over. In the next chapter, we'll go even deeper into the personal stories of survivors, guards, and families torn apart by uprisings. And we'll ask the question no one wants to answer. Are these riots the problem? Or are they the symptom? Survivors of the uprisings, voices from the inside. Statistics tell you how many died. News headlines tell you who was blamed. But only the survivors can tell you what it felt like to be inside when the walls of order collapsed, to hear the screams, to smell the smoke, to know you might not make it out alive. For many, prison uprisings are not moments in history. They are scars that never heal. Attica, a hostage speaks. At Attica, one of the few surviving hostages later described the terror of being caught between inmates and the state. They told us they wouldn't hurt us. They kept saying we were safe. But when the troopers came in, they didn't care who they shot. Inmates, guards, hostages, it didn't matter. They just fired. He lived. 10 other hostages did not. Carandiru, survivor's nightmare. In Carandiru, the survivors described a massacre so brutal it haunts them decades later. I raised my hands. I shouted, "I surrender." They shot me anyway. I fell and pretended to be dead while they walked over the bodies. I could hear them laughing. Out of 111 who died, many never even fought. They were simply in the wrong place at the wrong time, and their voices were silenced forever. Ecuador, families of the dead. For the families, the pain is worse. In Ecuador, where cartels turned prisons into slaughterhouses, mothers waited outside for days, begging for news of their sons. Many only received them back in coffins. They told us our boys were safe. Then they called us to identify their bodies. We couldn't even recognize them. Guards trapped in the crossfire. It's not just inmates and families who suffer. Guards, many underpaid, undertrained, and outnumbered, are often thrown into impossible situations. During uprisings, they're seen as both targets and pawns. Some guards were taken hostage. Some were killed by inmates. Others were killed by their own governments during retaking operations, the children left behind. But perhaps the most invisible victims are the children, the sons and daughters of those killed, whether inmates or guards, grow up with a void that never closes. For them, prison uprisings aren't history lessons. They're the reason their fathers never came back. Transition to the finale. Every uprising leaves behind survivors, families, and scars. But the question remains, why does this cycle never end? Why, after Attica, after Carandiru, after Ecuador, are prisons still erupting in blood? In our final chapter, we uncover the deeper truth, the hidden forces behind prison uprisings, and we'll ask, are these rebellions failures of justice or warnings to the world